Well, hi there, it's me, Penny. Welcome back to my practice room. In this video, we're looking at Invention Number 1 in C major by J.S. Bach, and specifically, fingering is on the menu. I'm going to show you the fingering that I use for this piece. You'll see the sheet music with all those little numbers penciled in. And then we'll talk about some general tips, recommendations for choosing effective fingering in the pieces you play. And then I'm going to finish it off with a few passages from the same piece where I've marked in some fingering that I would definitely not use. Doesn't mean that fingering is incorrect. Other people use it, but for me, it feels wrong. And so I want to share all of this with you and hope that it's helpful. Let's get right in there. Okay, so here we have Invention Number 1 in C major with my fingering. I'll go at a slow to moderate pace. Okay, so you've seen my fingering for the piece, and if you've watched some of my fingering videos before, then you know that I am not one of these pianists who writes in to the sheet music every single fingering. Some people do. Gina Bachauer, the famous pianist, did that. My teacher told me so. But my teacher, who was also famous, she didn't do it. She couldn't stand to have every single note marked with the fingering. So it works for some, and it doesn't work for others. And it really does not work for me. To see all those numbers, it almost paralyzes my hands and my brain. Because for me, fingering is a more intuitive thing, and the fingers, they just seem to know what to do. And even just analyzing this kind of thing, almost I get nervous that I'm going to put a cog in the wheel and disable my fingering ability, fingering power, as it were. But as I say, I'm trying to share my ideas and to understand what is going on. Okay, so maybe what we'll do now is to just talk about some general recommendations. You can tell I'm learning how to do this. Got my new microphone, and I got the overhead. I just want to think about the piano, not all the lights, camera, action. But let's get into just a few tips or perhaps recommendations for effective fingering at the piano. Now, keep in mind that your hand is different from mine, and from the guy next door and the lady across the street. We all have different shapes and sizes of hands. And so you have to find fingering that feels comfortable and that it's sustainable and that most importantly allows you to communicate to the listener your musical ideas. that is the most essential thing. I've scribbled in a few general tips here, so I'm going to go over those. I wanted to make the first of these tips one that comes from the great Bach pianist Rosalyn Tureck, and this is an introduction to the Performance of Bach, Book 2. And there's a little page, I think it's page 10, where there's a couple paragraphs on fingering in Bach. And there's, in that, she says, so this is my general tip 1. Frequent changes of fingering fit the style of this music. And of course, we're referring to Bach's music. I think most of these rules could be said to apply for other things, but specifically, I'm talking in relation to playing Bach's music. So you want to change your fingers as much as possible. Why? Well, that means you're using the whole hand. Assuming that you have 10 fingers, not everyone does, and so I cannot speak to how to finger a piece in that regard. That would be a very interesting topic. But assuming we have 10 fingers, and use them all, right? Now, there are smart places and not so smart places to use each of those fingers, I suppose, but use of the entire hand, frequent changes of fingering fit the style of this music. So the opposite of that would be to, avoid using the same couple of fingers over and over again. You see that a lot with beginner students, intermediate students, and sometimes even with professionals. I start to cringe when I see a lot of this and not so much of these other two fingers 4 and 5. And of course, I'm assuming that you know your finger numbers. Let's just go over that real quick. Finger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So the numbers on the page that you saw correspond to those numbers. So you want to use all of them because that promotes constant movement of the hand. Playing Bach's music requires, because the music is polyphonic, it's horizontal music, it's filled with lines and, patterns. And so we want to hear those individual layers in this music, these voices, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or even 5 voices when they're really hard stuff. This is just 2 voices in this piece. But we want to hear them all, even just 2 voices, with good clarity. And to do that, it's just impossible to get any satisfying clarity of articulation when you're only using the same couple of fingers over and over because it's comfy and those are the fingers that you text with and that's what you're used to. And granted, fingers 4 and 5 really are not, nor will they ever be, as strong as your thumb or your third finger, for goodness sake. But still, you want to incorporate all of the fingers as much as possible so that you have constant movement of the hand and the arm follows that as well, the wrist, rotation, all of this. If you're only using a few fingers, then rotation and mobility are seriously compromised. for the password, the drawbridge is closed. The drawbridge to musical artistry is closed. Open the drawbridge and use all of your fingers. What else do I have here? So that was from Rosalyn. Whoops. And now a few more from myself here. And these are just general, these are not etched in stone. These are not the 10 commandments of piano playing kind of thing, Take it with a certain degree of salt because not only is every hand different, but every piece is different, and you want to finger accordingly to the kind of musical texture that you're playing. Whether you've got a lot of running passage work, 16th notes over and over as we have here, or maybe it's slower long notes, more connected and so forth. But general tips, I'm going to throw them at you, and we'll see what sticks to the wall here. You want to prepare the hand. Choose fingering based on what's coming up in the passage. So if you see a leap coming up, then prepare your hand. And this is where finger substitutions come in very handy. I believe Rosalyn Tureck refers to those as underlapping. I had never heard that term before. But finger substitutions, where you play a note with one finger and then you substitute to another finger, you know? It lets you cover a lot of ground. In terms of ornaments, like maybe you got a mordant or a trill, avoid starting an ornament on a weak finger. If you can, you know, this is none of these, as I say, are etched in stone, but if you can manage to start your ornament on a longer or stronger finger, then by all means do so. Here's one that's very essential. Avoid any kind of fingering that promotes crowding and squishing of the hand. Sometimes it's unavoidable for sure, but if it's if it is avoidable, it's dyslexic sometimes. Sorry. If it is avoidable, then avoid it, right? You know, you see, I'll show you some fingering in a moment here that just it just forces the hand to get all like this, and I just the cramping and clenching and tightening of it, like clarity of articulation is absolutely lost when you're using fingers, like maybe you're using 1-5-1-5 kind of thing for notes that are very close together. I mean, it's just this kind of thing. What we're getting at here is you want to use fingering that promotes a natural rounded hand position. Like if you're holding, I don't have a baseball handy or an orange. I got one in the fridge, but just imagine you're holding an orange and the way your fingers naturally curve around the orange. Basically, you want to have that going for you at the piano. Sometimes we have to open up and flatten out the hand for sure. But especially in running passage work, find fingering that promotes that curved hand position. Avoid using adjacent fingers for wide leaps. So maybe you have to cover like a sixth. Maybe don't do it with fingers 1 and 2 kind of thing. You know, fingers that are farther apart work best for notes that are further apart. In general, you may come to the end of a section or the end of a passage where there's some closure, like a cadence, musical equivalent of a period or the end of a paragraph, and you're going to come off the key. Well, then I suppose that's not such a big deal if you're using adjacent fingers because it's something new coming up. But in the middle of a passage, you know, avoid playing notes that are far apart with fingers that are close together. You can just, you know, again, plan for what's coming up in the music that you're playing. You've probably heard this one before. I've heard it from, I don't remember which teacher told it to me, probably long before I went off to university even. But that idea of avoiding a thumb on a black note. Sometimes it cannot be helped, you know. But if you can grab hold of the black note that you've got to play with a longer finger than the thumb, then by all means do so. And I say this in lessons to students, but you know, again, at the end of the day, playing the piano is about communicating through sound. You want to move people, or if it's just you that you're playing for, you want to move yourself in an emotional, a meaningful, perhaps even a spiritual kind of a way. And if using the same finger over and over allows you to somehow miraculously get a pearly golden tone, then you go ahead and do it. But this just chances are that that doesn't work. So these tips, at least for me and through my experience, I've had some very good teachers. I was at the Eastman School of Music for 6 years, undergrad and master's with Barry Snyder, and then my doctoral studies at Manhattan School of Music with Constance Keene. And so I cannot recall a single lesson in that decade of higher ed learning where where we talked specifically about fingering. Fingering was something that would come up based on the teacher hearing some bumps or some lumpiness in the playing. And then they would say, "What fingering are you using there? It's not clear." And I'd show them, and they would say, perhaps, "Well, try this." And then I'd try it, and the golden key, right? But it's not like we ever have lessons on, at least in the advanced level. I cannot recall lessons where we were just, let's talk about fingering, and we get away from the piano and work at the desk and talk about stuff. No, it's about the playing, and it's about the sound, listening. Abram Chasins, my teacher's husband, he used to say, you must have X-ray ears, listen deeply, very, very deeply. And you'll find the right thing. Your body will find a way to do what you want it to do. That was the first thing Constance Keene told me when I first met her. I had my first lesson with her, and she told me I was kind of micromanaging too much. The first joint of the finger doing this and the wrist doing that and everything. She said, just hear the sound that you want. Hear the quality of tone. Hear it literally in your mind, and then your body will find a way. So that comes before these tips on fingering, certainly. And what else do we have here? Avoiding unnecessary crossovers. So like in your left hand, crossing over with your from your thumb over to finger 2 for a wide leap, this kind of thing. This, at least to me, this makes no sense. I don't know why you would do that. And I've got some examples to show you. Another thing would be for mordants, these little decorations kind of thing. I think most people, most players, students, will use the same 2 fingerings. Maybe they'll use 1, 3, 1, and it works. Personally, I like to use 3 different fingers, 1 for each note. Again, Rosalyn Tureck, frequent changes of fingering. Or what was the other slogan? I think it was one of my teachers told me, fresh fingers, change them up, within repeated passages especially, fresh fingers. So for a mordant, instead of going 1, 3, 1, CBC, I would go 1, 3, 2. It just, you can hear it in the sound. Sorry. As opposed to, because the thumb creates bumps. It's a heavy, fat, thick finger on the side of the hand. So I just find that changing the fingerings within mordants can be very effective. And then avoiding fingering that contributes to a stiff hand. Again, that curved, rounded, natural hand position. You want to use fingering that promotes that as much as possible. And I think I'm going to leave my general tips there. So, time to charge the battery, and I'll show you some examples of fingering in this invention number 1 that I would not use. Okay, so we're looking at measure 3 of the left hand part. This bit of fingering with a circle around it is fingering that I have seen used, and I do not personally like how it feels at all. This 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Left hand measure 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. It works, certainly. Why do I not like it? Because it's only using the same 2 fingers. It's not promoting use of the whole hand. It's not changing fingers. It's not fresh fingers. And when you're using just a couple of fingers over and over, it also doesn't promote constant movement and rotation. So I would not use that. That feels very strange and peculiar to me. Instead, and I'll show you on the screen my fingering, for that spot, I would use 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Instead of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now you can't hear the difference when I just isolate the notes slowly like this, but in the scheme of the performance, I think you would notice, and certainly I notice, and it feels much better to use 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's look at another left-hand spot, measure 4 and 5. So here we have 2, 1, 2, 1. This is in the middle of measure 4. Those numbers with the circles around them are fingerings that I would not use if my life depended on it. And that fingering in measure 4 that you see, 2, 1, 2, 1, again, it's those same 2 fingers. What is it? Johnny One Note? I think that was the title of the song. This is like Piano Pete with 2 fingers. Gonna do it all with 2 fingers. I like to use more of the hands, so for that bar I'm starting it with 1, 4, and then 3, 2, 1, 3, 2 with a substitution to 1. That just feels good. Maybe I'm a little bit, I don't know, attention deficit disorder and I just need to be moving. Maybe I have a fidget thing. I do tend to fidget a little bit, but it just feels so much better. I think it has to do with I used to enjoy and play quite a lot of sports, and so was kind of taught to use the body in effective ways, and so I guess it's just a subconscious application of that on the piano. And this 2, 1, 2, 1 just seems very not like the high-powered Lamborghini or Porsche car. This is like my little the little Chevette or something. Gets the job done, but maybe with not so much panache. You measure 5. That fingering, 5, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 5. Ooh, I'm cringing. You can't see me, but I'm cringing. That feels horrible. Why? Well, not because the previous example where we're using the same 2 fingers over and over, but because we're unnecessarily clenching and squeezing and constricting the hand. Especially the end of that, 2, 5. And with 4 being used as well, I feel like when your fingers are in this position, very tight together, it makes your hand harder to rotate. There's more, things become immobile. So what I would use there at measure 8, left hand, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 5. Get your 5 on there, and then you're ready with 2 on the A. So 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 5, 2. And then we'll skip ahead to measure 11, left hand. So there with the circle around it, those fingerings, no thank you. We got 3, 2. Oh, this is another cringe moment for me. It may work for you, and if it does, that's terrific. Use it, you know. It does not work for me. This feels risky. This feels like, not changing your PIN number in a decade. You're asking for trouble to start a leap like that of a 4th with 3 to 2. Oh, 3, 2, 1, 2, and then 4, 1, 4, 2. I don't know. It's a little bit too much responsibility for the 4th finger. I kind of feel like 1, 2, 3, 4. That part's fine, obviously. And then 5, 1, 3, 1. Again, this is unnecessarily clenching, squeezing the fingers together, which constricts the movement, the ability to move. and to keep that natural hand shape. So what would I use in measure 11, left hand? I'll put it on the screen. I've got 4, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2. So changing of fingers, and then my thumb is nicely over top the A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, we're always choosing fingering based on what's coming up. So those last 4 notes of the bar, 5, 5, 2, 3, 1, and then on we go. So that is measure 11. Measure 12, I have seen this fingering in the right hand. 5, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, there's nothing wrong with the 5. I actually shouldn't have circled that. But it's the 1, 2, 1, 2. It's more of that business again. I don't want to go around that track, thanks. Change it up. Change it up. So what I do there, measure 12, right hand, 5, 2, 3, 1, 3, 4, 5, instead of 1, 2, 1, 2. And in the left hand of that, measure 12, the fingering that I would not use is 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's not so bad, but this part that comes next, 3, 1, 3, 1, there's more of that sameness of fingers. Just recycling a couple of fingers. And you notice it's never 3, 5, 3, 5 that gets recycled. It's always 2, 1, 2, 1, or 3, 1, 3, 1. So this 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it's that bit in the middle that I don't like. Then we got another mordant in measure 12. Left hand, D, C, D is the mordant. And I have seen this used. And there's really nothing wrong with it. I tend to be rather, I tend to micromanage a lot of things at the piano for myself. Not for you. You do what you like. But for me, to get it the way I want it to sound, there's what was it? I think it was Osip Gabrilovich, the great Russian modern pianist, who said that there was no invention, no gauge, no device capable of detecting the amount of subtlety going on at the piano. So there's so much that one cannot see and or even explain. It's just, we're trying. But for me, I like on the mordants, I like to use 3 different fingers. So I would use 1, 3, 2 instead of 1, 2, 1. And then you see the rest of that icky fingering crossing over with 2 and then under with 1. It's just too much of the same 2 fingers for my taste. Then right hand, measure 14, in the middle there, it's beat 2. I don't like this fingering of 4, 2, 5, 2. It's risky. I just feel like my chances of hitting a wrong note have been bumped up considerably with that fingering. I don't want wrong notes, thanks. Like, they're unavoidable sometimes, but try to avoid them. And then I think the rest of the piece is fairly straightforward. Probably 99.9% of us use the same fingering for the rest. Maybe I'll just point out measure 20, left hand, beat 4. This fingering that I would not use there is 1, 4, 3, 5, 1. Again, it's crowding the fingers all together around one tiny vicinity, which impacts your ability to move the hand, keep things mobile. So instead of 1, 4, 3, 5, 1, I would use 1, 3, 2, 4, 3 instead of, oh, it's just so clunky and cumbersome and risky. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. And I did do a previous tutorial about this piece, showing some of the motives that I listened for. So that might be a good one to follow up with if you want to watch another, if you have it in you. And but do let me know in the comments if this is helpful, or maybe you can, if you want to share your fingering in the comments, you know, that might be interesting for all, because I'm learning too. I would love to see what fingering you're using, and you know, it's easy to type in numbers. But anyhow, we'll see you again soon. I have another performance coming up, so I gotta go practice. But thank you for sticking with me through this tutorial. I hope it's helpful, and happy practicing to you. We'll see you again soon for more performances of Bach's music and teaching tips, practice tips. All right, take care, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.